Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's Sunday Conversation here on Big Country Politics. I'm Manny Diaz. This week we are joined by Doug Williamson. He is the Director of Governmental Affairs at the Abilene Chamber of Commerce, otherwise known as the one-time editor at the Abilene Reporter News. Doug, it's always a treat just to chat with you. Your wealth of knowledge, you know this area, you know the city so well.
Well, when you've been around this long, it sort of piles up a little bit.
Yes, definitely. Well, today we're talking high-speed broadband internet and, its impact in rural areas, certainly in our area of West Texas. First question. Let's get this going here. Tell me, what is high-speed broadband internet, and are there differing concepts of this when it comes to state and the federal government?
Certainly. Probably the phrase that we used 10, 15 years ago, it still applies. It's the information superhighway. Mm-hmm. And broadband, high-speed broadband is how fast can you go down that highway? Is it a 6-lane, a 4-lane, or a gravel road, basically? And the federal government, the Federal Communications Commission, has set a standard for what high-speed broadband would be. Texas goes by that standard at this point. Most other states do, but there's some states that have their own standards. So the standard is 25.3, which is 25 megabytes per second as a download. So if you're opening a web page or you're reading, something online or you're streaming something, to be broadband, that can work with if you're broadband at 25 down. 3 is upload. So if you're going to send a picture to a friend, you upload that, and the minimum standard for that is 3 megabytes per second. The government looks, and there's 3 different stages. There's the broadband stage that gives you your underserved, which is 25 to 100 MPS, which you can operate well with that. You can also go above that, go over 100, and you're really in a high-speed broadband. But anything under 25 they consider as unserved.
Wow, and I tell you one thing, the kids on the PlayStation and the Xbox, anything 25 and below, it's gonna lag a lot with what they do, or just certainly if you're just down or if you're streaming anything, whether it be Netflix, Hulu, or any of those type of things.
Yeah, we've come a long way since the AOL disc.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. Well, back in June, it was announced by the Biden administration that Texas was set to receive $3.3 billion in federal funds to boost broadband in the state. It would connect nearly 2.8 million households in Texas without broadband. What would this mean for folks in Abilene, and why is the Abilene Chamber of Commerce concerned about rural broadband internet access?
Sure. Well, let me answer the second question first. We're interested in rural broadband because anything that affects the big country affects Abilene. Everyone knows Abilene is a hub for medical care, for education, for retailing. And so anything that will affect out in the country will affect us. And so the Chamber is interested. Our job is to be the #1 advocate for business in the area. When we're talking about the broadband, what that money is going to do is to give broadband or provide broadband services to the folks who don't have it. Taylor County has very, very few folks who can't receive broadband. Cannot.
Right.
So basically, depending on which survey you look, it's either 0, in other words, 100% availability, or 250 households out of 50 some odd thousand that are unable to receive broadband at this point. It's not available to them. Go over to Callahan County, and it's between 1.5% and 2% that cannot get any broadband at all.
Wow. Yeah. I imagine that's concerning to you guys.
Certainly. I mean, this is the way you communicate. This is the way you learn, this is the way you get information out, and it's very important.
Yeah. Well, Governor Greg Abbott signed House Bill 9 into law in June, setting up a $1.5 billion Texas Broadband Fund to expand internet throughout Texas. It's something Texans will vote on come November 7th. What is the Chamber's stance on this bill?
We're 100% behind that. Our Business Advocacy Council studied Proposition 8 and recommended to the Board of Directors that we support that, and the board unanimously voted in favor of it. Voting opens on October 23rd, and as you said, the election's on November 7th, but that $1.5 billion can make a real difference for folks here in the state.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about almost $5 billion federal and state funds dedicated to expanding internet availability across Texas. Can this amount of money be stretched enough? I mean, will this impact the entire state? I mean, or do you feel that this may leave somebody out, leave some folks out?
It's going to be tough to spread it. And let me give you this example. I was speaking this week to one of our big country broadband providers. His company is looking at going into a small community in the Abilene area. The community has 1,500, maybe 2,000 residents, which would be, 500 or 600 households. It is going to cost the company $30 million to provide service for those 2,000 people.
$30 million for 2,000.
And what was the number? 2.8 million across the state?
Yes.
Now, it's a smaller company, so the costs are going to be greater. I mean, if you went to AT&T or Verizon to do this, just their economies of scale would bring that cost down, but they're not real interested in the small communities to come into.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, that's an alarming figure there. All right, we're going to step aside for a quick commercial break, but when we come back, more with Doug Williamson. He is the Director of Governmental Affairs. We're talking about broadband in rural areas of Texas, certainly here in West Texas. That and more right here on Big Country Politics.
Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Well, welcome back to our Sunday conversation here on Big Country Politics. I'm Manny Diaz. This week, our special guest is Director of Governmental Affairs, Mr. Doug Williamson. Doug, we were talking a lot of numbers, a lot of money that's going to be poured into the state of Texas when it comes to rural broadband internet access. Tell me, what has the Chamber of Commerce done or been able to do to kind of advocate for rural broadband?
Really, rural broadband has been an emphasis in our legislative agenda for 6, 8, maybe even 10 years. We've been paying a lot of attention and doing what we can. In 2021, the state legislature approved the Texas Broadband Development Office, which is charged with putting a plan together to get broadband across the state of Texas and also administering funds, different grants and things such as that. We've worked with them very closely. They early on had a listening tour when they went around the state, and we hosted them here in Abilene. We had about 70 people come out to give their testimony or their comments about broadband to the folks. We've attended several regional meetings and some statewide meetings of that organization, that group. We've signed on to coalitions, both statewide and nationwide, in trying to make this happen. We've obviously advocated with our lawmakers, both in D.C. and in Austin. We've just been active advocates.
Now, I can tell you, coming from my last post at SanAngeloLive.com, when the owner of the website, Joe Hyde, was running for county judge for Tom Green County, I was tasked with putting live streams together, whether it be in South Tom Green County in Cristoval or throughout the city of San Angelo. And what we ran into, or even at the Fort Concho stables there in San Angelo, was just little to no internet access. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is truly troubling, because how are people really accessing information, or how are they getting by in all this in this time? And
one of the problems is these maps that have been put out by the development office and other groups show where it's available, but not where you can use it. So it doesn't help you in that kind of situation. It can tell you that, the owner of the business could have paid something to, and gotten broadband, but they haven't.
Right.
And so.
Yeah, available and being able to use, they're two different things.
And the other part of that is your digital divide. Do you have the skills to use it? And I know in early conversation they were saying that to make it viable, you're going to have to teach classes.
Yeah. Well, funds that would go to broadband internet access is a major step forward. It's one thing to give service providers the ability to distribute internet access, but is something like this sustainable? What are you hearing from service providers? I mean, being able to get this going, but still being able to have the resources to have it out there.
No, I really haven't heard anything from the providers about sustainability. But I mean, they're still trying to work out plans of how can we logistically make it happen. And my fear is that on sustainability, it'll be like when you buy the new car. It's great, it's shiny, there are no dents in it, you love it. And about 3 months later, as those payments are coming due, you start thinking a little bit about it, and then the gas mileage isn't what you think it's going to be. I mean, it's going to be money driven, I would assume. As to the sustainability of it. Of course, the federal government has currently a program that's providing a $30 discount for poverty level families to be able to get internet services, and they're looking at continuing that.
Wow. Politicians like District U.S. Congressman August Lugar have called not having broadband internet in rural areas of the country a matter of national security. I've heard him talk about this specifically. From someone like you who's associated with governmental, military affairs, are you ready to put broadband internet in rural areas and national security together?
I think he's right. When he talks about it, he talks about China, that China is so far ahead of us technologically, which is true, and that's a danger. That's a huge danger to us. But because you think about communicating as one of the things you do with broadband, but today there are farmers out on their tractors plowing the field, and they're being guided by GPS. You've got doctors all over the nation who are providing medical services to folks hundreds and thousands of miles away because of telehealth. Broadband is really going to be the connection between people.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Doug, I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
Yes, sir. Well, for Doug Williamson, Director of Governmental Affairs at the Abilene Chamber of Commerce, former editor at the Abilene Reporter News, I am Manny Diaz. This has been another Sunday Conversation right here on Big Country Politics. We'll see you next time. God bless.